security operatives are on the hunt for persons said to be behind the missing over 1,300 containers belonging to the Electricity Company of Ghana, ECG, that vanished from the Tema port. According to Class News sources, so far 40 containers have been retrieved after surveillance led to an Indian with a warehouse in Bong who claims to have bought them last year. You recall that a report of an investigative committee put together by Minister for Energy and Green Transition uncovered that more than 1,300 containers which were meant to be cleared at the Tema port are unaccounted for. The committee, chaired by Professor Innocent Senior Akwa, reviewed that though the ECG initially claimed to have 2,491 uncleared containers filled with cables and other essential equipment, the assessment found only 1,134 containers, leaving 1,347 missing. A shocked energy minister, after receiving the report, assured that a full-scale investigation involving the Attorney General and the police would be conducted to find the missing containers. Barely 72 hours after, about 40 containers have been found. We've been joined on the line by the Minister for Energy and Green Transition, John Abdullah Jinapot. Before we go on the line to speak to him, listen to an interview he earlier granted.
The briefing I got this morning, and let me comment the National Security Operatives and the law enforcement agencies. The information I got this morning is that already one person, an Indian man of extraction, has been picked up by the National Security. 40 containers have been intercepted. He claims that they were sold to him last year. The investigation would continue. We want to secure the containers first, and at the right time we'll go with the media to take a look at the containers. The law will take its course. I am not interested in the politics, and let me be clear about that. My interest has to do with the containers. This for me has nothing to do with the political party. When containers are stolen, we have to ensure that the law takes its course, and that's exactly what we are doing. And so that's a matter of investigation, and the law enforcement agencies would ensure that the law takes its course. There are also reports of some other areas that they are picking intelligence. They will trace all of them, retrieve all the containers as soon as possible, and put the perpetrators before the courts of competent jurisdiction. Let me just sound that when we start prosecuting these people, let nobody come to say we are witch hunting. These are properties of the states. Every legitimate and legal means to ensure that we retrieve them and to hold all those behind these acts to account. And so we'll continue to work hard and ensure that we retrieve all these containers. We suspect that these are part of the 1,300 that are missing. The remaining ones are at the port. The National Security is helping us to secure them as well. Now our interest is to also secure or trace the whereabouts of the 1,300 containers. And then we can make sure that we get the over 1,300 containers, account for them, and put them to good use. What I want is simple. We want all the containers accounted for and secured. So far, we have already given some instructions. For instance, the decision to merge the procurement directorate with the estate unit, we've directed that should be reversed. We should have a standalone procurement directorate with qualified approved provisions. In 2024 alone, they procured more than 700% what had been approved to them by the board. More importantly, we've asked that they give us some periodic updates in terms of their essential goods and services that they procure. A lot of the containers that we found stuck at the port, the items they did not need them immediately. Some containers arrived, they had items, they claimed that they couldn't clear the containers, but they were still awarding contracts for similar items. All top, and then we'll keep monitoring them. But the most important one has to do with the whereabouts of those containers.
That's the Minister for Energy and Green Transition, John Abdullah Jinapot. Mr. Benjamin Insia is an energy analyst and he joins us on the line. Good evening to you, sir. Very grateful for your time tonight on 505. So, with the national security, they say they've found about 40 of these containers. An Indian businessman with a warehouse at Bong claiming that these were sold to him last year. Interesting twist, isn't it?
For some of us, we are not surprised because we knew that it will end up in private hands and later diverted to ECG. So it's not news to some of us. We know that looking at the national security nature and architecture of the port, looking at how goods are cleared with respect to various legal positions and provisions of the customs divisions of GRA. These goods couldn't have been missing without the authorization from GRA, that's especially customs division, without the authorization and consent of the Ghana Standard Authority, because before these goods are cleared, containers must be opened, and then some tests must be run on the various goods in these containers for them to verify whether they meet our standards. So GSA must also be in the know in terms of the whereabouts of these containers, or even who cleared them. So we are not surprised that today 40 have been found, and we think that most of the containers that we are talking about here will end up at ECG warehouses at the expense of the electricity end user and state.
Okay, so with the process that you've gone through with us about clearing, how does something that belongs to the Electricity Company of Ghana end up in private hands, that the ECG is not the ones clearing them, moving them from the port, but later it will end up at ECG warehouse? How does that happen?
Okay, it happens when ECG is not able to pay for the clearing of these goods. When it happens, what it means is that these goods will go to demurrage, and they are likely put at the various DRA terminals or their bonded warehouses. So if they are there and the time of demurrage elapsed, the GRA, based on their legal position, could auction these goods. So when they are auctioned, the ECG is the first respondent to respond to this particular auction policy. However, ECG may renege on this responsibility, and then GRA and the Customs Division will then now auction them to the private person. So if auctioned to private persons, then ECG goes to this particular private person and even buys them at double the price of how much we imported these consignment or these goods. So I think that is why today it's been confirmed that we have 40 containers at the premise of one Indian. I think that GRA might have auctioned them to these Indians with the consent and acceptance of workers of the Ghana Standard Authority and also some national security operatives. But sadly, GRA is not talking. The commission of customs, or the customs division of the GRA, should be talking to us now how these goods left their terminals. The Ghana Standard Authority should be telling us how these goods left their terminals. The national security should be doing some talking, right? But sadly, they are all quiet, leaving everything to the ministry. Any investigation the minister needs is at the customs division of the GRA, because the day these goods were cleared, the person who cleared them is in the known, or is known by officers of the customs division of GRA. So I don't know why they are not talking.
Okay.
I don't also know why the Ghana Standard Authority is not also talking. I think that we need to hear from them to bring some clarity to this ambiguous theft that occurred at the port.
Now, the minister has assured that with the investigations that is going on, national security are on the heels of some people. So in due course, on time, they'll go with the media to these containers, their location, will inspect them, and then we'll get to know who these individuals are. But it's really interesting that if customs auctioned them, Standards Authority is aware, they wouldn't have been declared missing, because once it's said to be missing, it means that it was not auctioned. If it was auctioned, they would have said, oh, this was auctioned because it had gathered demurrage and ECG couldn't pay. But in the committee report, it stated that they are missing. and they are not auctioned?
I think the committee, actually I don't know their terms of reference, and I've not seen the report, but I believe they worked based on quantitative investigation, and that is auditing of the stock as they received the report. So they just did stock accounting, or they did some stock accounting to confirm the numbers of containers as stated by the GRE. So that will not be able to tell us how these goods were cleared, or
but
how
I'm sure
standard
once
authority.
they went to the port to do the counting, officials of GRA, Customs Division, Ghana Standards Authority will be there, and as well as the ECG. So they will ask, you said you imported these number. This is what we have. Where are the rest? They could have said, we auctioned them. And that could have been contained in their report because it's an investigative committee.
Yes, I think any investigative committee has their terms of reference. Maybe extension of queries or investigation to, which is the qualitative part of the investigation, was not established by that terms of reference. So they may not extend any invitation to Customs Division or Standard Authority. But I believe that since the report, which is the primary findings, establishes some missing containers, Standard Authority must help us unravel this ambiguity. The Customs Divisions of the GRA must also help us by telling Ghanaians where these 1,357 containers left the port, and who were the beneficiaries, or who took stock of these 1,357. We want to hear from them. We shouldn't only wait for the minister to initiate an investigative process and then also spend a lot of money on sittings and committee sittings and everything. I think they have the report. They should compile their reports and tell us who cleared these goods and on which date these goods were cleared, and maybe their final destination.
Interesting. I can see we have interesting days ahead, but from what you've just said, maybe in the coming days, that's what you want to hear. Not national security tracing or trailing containers, but you want these officers at the port to come out with it, so it shortens the time with which we are looking for these containers, right?
Yes.
I'm very grateful that you joined us. And Benjamin Insia is an energy analyst. So let's stay in this